One day, Kannawa caught Kamegawa slacking off and firmly told him to get back to work. He quickly apologized and assured her he would get back to it. She noticed the girl he had been talking to was Doi, and it made sense to her that people of the same age would meet up and chat. Reflecting on what the other girls had said, she wondered if that was truly the case. Then she spotted something on his face and wiped it off, leaving him confused and blushing. It dawned on her that she hadn't realized what she was doing. Was it obvious? Meanwhile, Kannawa noticed Kamegawa talking to another girl. He suggested they invite their other doki, and the girl agreed, mentioning it had been a long time since they all met up. Kannawa realized he was chatting with a colleague from his batch, which she thought was great, as keeping in touch with your doki was important for work. She had something work-related to discuss with him, but decided to hold off for the moment. Soon after, she overheard someone else ask if they were going to the fireworks display and if they could join. Surprised, Kannawa stepped in, saying that Sene shouldn't interfere in their group's business as it wasn't their concern. The others continued discussing where they would meet and whether it would be fine to pick a location. Someone suggested exchanging line IDs to coordinate the plans. At that point, Kannawa asked if she could come along too. Initially, the other senpai didn't object, but after thinking it over, they realized it might be too difficult to move for such a large group and cancelled the plan. With a smirk and tears welling in her eyes, Kannawa bitterly thought that only someone as disliked as she was could pull off a move like that. The sting of this realization hit hard, but she sighed and admitted she wasn't really interested in going anyway. She told Kamegawa it had been a long time since he had seen his doki, and it would be better for him to spend time with them rather than worrying about her. Kamegawa and the girls exchanged confused looks, unsure of what to say. Kannawa, feeling a bit awkward, began to wonder if they actually wanted her to join. She quickly brushed the thoughts aside, convincing herself she was overthinking it, but despite her efforts, she couldn't shake the gloomy feeling. Just then, Kamegawa asked if she was free and if she'd like to come with them. Surprised, she looked at him, asking if they were really serious. Earlier, Kannawa had been invited to the festival by her Kouhai, but somehow she got lost in the crowd of juniors. Even though she was invited, she didn't feel brave enough to search for them. They had grouped up so quickly that before she knew it, she was alone. As she stood there, thinking about the others, she convinced herself that she didn't really belong with them anyway. Just then, a girl approached her, saying she had been looking for her. Kannawa didn't recognize her at first, so the girl introduced herself as Huda. Huda explained that Kamegawa had been worried about Kannawa and had been running around the venue trying to find her. He had tried calling, but his calls weren't going through. When Kannawa checked her phone, she realized her battery was dead, which explained everything. Feeling guilty, she apologized for causing trouble after they had gone out of their way to invite her. But Huda reassured her, saying it wasn't a big deal at all and that she was actually excited to finally get a chance to talk to her. Kannawa, feeling a little awkward, said she wasn't what they needed to talk about, but Huda explained that Kamegawa was always talking about her. This had made her curious. She added that whenever Kamegawa talked, it was always about how nice Kannawa was and how much he appreciated her for teaching him so many things. He credited her for a lot of his progress. Since Huda worked in a different apartment, she hadn't had the chance to talk to Kannawa before, though she'd heard all sorts of stories about her around the office. Huda assured her that Kamegawa wasn't spreading any gossip, just good things, and she wanted to meet her in person. Embarrassed, Kannawa blushed and told Huda she was being too flattering. Huda just laughed, saying Kamegawa's stories about her were spot on. Curious, Kannawa asked why she thought that. Huda responded by pointing out that being seen with Kamegawa all the time must attract attention from his doki. Just as she finished speaking, Kamegawa appeared, looking out of breath, and told Kannawa how worried he had been. She reassured him, saying everything was fine now. Huda then mentioned that Kannawa must be starving and suggested they grab something to eat nearby. Without waiting for an answer, she started dragging Kannawa along. Kamegawa protested, asking Huda to stop pulling her like that, but she just waved him off, saying everything would be fine if he followed them. Kannawa started to object again, complaining about how crowded it was, but before he could finish, Kannawa reached out and took his hand. He grabbed it, and when their eyes met, Kannawa blushed a little. With a soft smile, she teased him, saying she couldn't let him get lost now. Just then, fireworks lit up the sky in bright, colourful bursts. As they watched the display, Kannawa mentioned that a client was upset and Kamegawa had made a mistake. He apologised, admitting he'd messed up. She asked if he could fix it, and he said he could. Kannawa handed Kamegawa a few items, explaining that since he'd been up all night fixing the issue, he should take a break and use these to relax. He thanked her and promised he'd pay her back, but she brushed it off, saying it was just something small from the convenience store and no big deal. She had really wanted to help with the task, but Kamegawa was set on handling it himself. As his senpai, she felt a little guilty, wondering if she should let him grow more on his own. Later on, Kamegawa sent her a message teasing that while the eye mask she gave him was nice, it didn't really suit him. He even included a funny picture of himself wearing it. That's when it hit her. She accidentally gave him the one she bought for herself. Embarrassed, she realised her mistake. One day, she found Kamegawa sulking after getting scolded by the chief. She told him straight up that if he had time to mope, he should be back to work. He nodded and she felt a bit bad, thinking she could have handled it more gently. Trying to smooth things over, she awkwardly grabbed his tie and gave him a little pat, leaving him completely puzzled. She wasn't sure if it was the right move, but at least she gave it a shot. Kamegawa later suggested they go out for lunch, but Kannawa turned him down, explaining that she wasn't worried about money like he was. Apologising, Kamegawa was left unsure of how to make it up to her. While she secretly wanted to have lunch with him, she didn't want him spending his money on her, so she told him to spend it on himself. As they walked, Kannawa dropped a receipt from the restaurant they'd gone to earlier. Kamegawa noticed and picked it up, but Kannawa, blushing, quickly snatched it back, embarrassed she'd forgotten to toss it. She sighed, realising she was the type to hold on to little mementos, even by accident. On their way home, Kannawa teased Kamegawa about his drinking habits, asking if he even knew what moderation meant. He sheepishly admitted he did, and she called him an idiot, laughing. With a dramatic sigh, she realised she wasn't in a position to criticise either. Suddenly, Kamegawa dozed off, and Kannawa found herself gently tucking him in, smiling at how peaceful he looked. She even noticed a lone white hair on his head, making her chuckle to herself. The next day, she noticed Kamegawa sighing a lot and told him to cut it out because it was making her feel down. He admitted it was because his parents kept calling and he couldn't answer while at work. Kannawa called him a punk for being annoyed by his parents, but immediately regretted not being nicer about it. Then she spotted his phone screen, which showed a message from his parents using the nickname Yu-chan. Kannawa giggled and teased him, calling him by that nickname, which made Kamegawa blush and quickly hide his phone in embarrassment. Later, Kannawa asked Kamegawa to fix something and handed him a marker. Kannawa got to work but soon admitted he wasn't sure what she actually meant by fix. Just then, Kannawa's phone rang. It was her mum. Her mum started chatting about a neighbour's new grandchild and then, out of nowhere, brought up the idea of marriage. That left Kannawa feeling totally embarrassed and frustrated, and she snapped, asking her mum to stop calling during the weekdays. Not giving up, her mum asked if Kannawa was seeing anyone. Trying to avoid getting set up, Kannawa quickly lied and said she was already dating someone. Her mum got way too excited and started asking for details. Flustered, Kannawa hurriedly ended the call, only to realise Kamegawa had overheard. He apologised for listening in and asked what exactly she wanted him to fix. That's when she realised she meant to tell him to put it back, not to fix it, and apologised for the misunderstanding. Kamegawa reassured her it was no big deal, but mentioned she sometimes slipped into her old dialect, which threw him off. He admitted that when she did, he often had to look up the words but still couldn't figure out what she meant this time. Surprised, Kannawa asked if she really used her dialect that much. Tears welled up as she realised that despite trying to learn the Tokyo dialect, she'd still been using her original one. Worried, she asked if she'd done it again just now, and Kamegawa hesitantly said she had, just a little. Feeling frustrated, she sighed and apologised for bringing it up. She asked him to let her know if he didn't understand something next time. He nodded, agreeing to her request, and they both turned away, feeling a little awkward. Meanwhile, Kamegawa couldn't help but feel a bit down, wondering if his senpai really did have a boyfriend. Just then, Kannawa's mum called again, and she was taken aback to hear that her mother was right outside her apartment. The sudden news startled both her and Kamegawa. Her mum wanted to know what time she'd be off work and insisted that Kannawa should bring her boyfriend along to dinner. Meanwhile, Kamegawa, feeling a bit chilly, complained about the air conditioning, pointing out that if they turned it off, it would be too hot. But if they kept it down, it would be too cold. Kannawa told him to tough it out, emphasising they couldn't afford to look unprofessional. She handed him a blanket, suggesting he use it since she wasn't going to. She added that if he got sick, she'd be the one stuck dealing with it at work. Kamegawa jokingly asked what she'd do if he actually did get sick, and Kannawa confidently replied that she'd handle it, just before sneezing. Concerned, Kamegawa asked if she was cold, but she stubbornly refused to admit it. He then handed her a drink, saying it wasn't just for the blanket. He'd accidentally ordered the wrong thing when he meant to get coffee. She brightened up and accepted it, but a few moments later, she sneezed again. Kannawa's mum apologised for the surprise dinner invite, but Kamegawa assured her it was totally fine. Earlier at the office, Kannawa had explained that her mother was coming over for dinner with her boyfriend. Trying to be supportive, Kamegawa thought it might be a good opportunity and even offered to help her find a restaurant. But then, Kannawa dropped the bombshell. She didn't actually have a boyfriend. Kamegawa let out a sigh of relief at that revelation, which Kannawa immediately caught onto, asking what he meant by that. Realising he might have sounded rude, he quickly apologised, saying he didn't mean to offend. Kannawa, sensing something was off, asked if he was alright, but Kamegawa brushed it off as nothing. She then confessed that if her mum found out she was single, she'd probably try to set her up with someone. Thinking on his feet, Kamegawa suggested he could pretend to be her boyfriend. Surprised, Kannawa asked if that could actually work, and they exchanged a glance, mulling it over. At dinner with her mum, Kamegawa felt nervous, despite his earlier confidence. Kannawa had already come up with a backstory for their fake relationship. During the dinner, Kamegawa briefly wondered if her mum was actually her sister or cousin because of her youthful appearance. Kannawa clarified that her mum was indeed her mother, like daughter. A bit embarrassed, Kannawa's mum apologised for talking so much and mentioned this was the first time her daughter had introduced a boyfriend, noting how shy Kannawa could be. She asked Kamegawa what he liked about Kannawa, adding that her daughter had always struggled with dating. Just as Kamegawa was about to answer, Kannawa's phone rang and she stepped away to take the call. Left alone, Kannawa's mother took the opportunity to ask Kamegawa about their real relationship, leaving him stunned and at a loss for words. Oh, the mums. Meanwhile, Kannawa struggled with her food and the waiter suggested she'd leave what she couldn't finish. Kamegawa noticed the untouched tomatoes on her plate and asked if he could have them. She agreed, saying she didn't want them, which Kamegawa appreciated. He then asked if she didn't like tomatoes, and she admitted they just weren't her thing. Kamegawa joked that he eats tomatoes like any normal person, which confused Kannawa. Seeing her bewildered expression, Kamegawa quickly explained that he knew "can't stomach" usually described something intolerable, but had heard it was used for food too. Blushing, Kannawa asked how he knew that, and Kamegawa admitted it was from TV. Feeling a bit proud of his efforts to understand her better, he pointed out that she really didn't like tomatoes. Later, Kamegawa reminded her that everyone was writing down their wishes and suggested they should do the same. Kannawa, however, refused, saying that if wishes could solve problems, there'd be no need for hard work, and she was a bit mature here. Still, Kamegawa made a wish, hoping to stand on his own someday. Kannawa said she'd make a wish too, and Kamegawa got excited. She wrote that she hoped his wish wouldn't come true, blushing as she explained she didn't want him to be independent just yet. This made Kamegawa wonder if her mum had figured out their fake relationship. Her mum asked Kamegawa about their real relationship, making him a bit nervous. He tried to explain, but she cut him off, complimenting her daughter and asking if he agreed. Kamegawa downplayed it, but her mum then asked if Kannawa had ever asked him for money. When Kamegawa said she hadn't, her mum joked that since Kannawa's only hobby was gaming, she should have plenty of cash. Kamegawa was taken aback when her mum suddenly asked if they had a child together and joked that Kamegawa couldn't escape now. Flustered, he insisted that this wasn't the case. Her mum smiled, but Kamegawa was baffled by her quick mood changes. She then shared that Kannawa had always been shy and reserved, and she worried about her, especially with her tough co-workers. Kannawa's mum reminisced about her daughter's shyness as a child. Despite her good grades and being class president, Kannawa had an incident during an event where she felt responsible after someone got hurt. She stood up and scolded everyone to prevent more injuries, showing her bravery and kind heart even if she didn't always see it herself. Her mum asked Kamegawa to never hate Kannawa, and he reassured her that he never could hate her. He admitted that, though Kannawa could be sharp-tongued, she always looked out for him, correcting and praising him as needed. Unbeknownst to them, Kannawa was quietly listening and wiping away tears. Later that night, Kannawa's mum thanked Kamegawa for joining them and for pretending to be her daughter's boyfriend. Kamegawa was confused, and her mum clarified. She knew he wasn't really Kannawa's boyfriend. When Kamegawa tried to deny it, she pointed out that he had called Kannawa-senpai. Realizing his slip-up, Kamegawa tried to recover, but Kannawa quickly called her mum over, and they left together. As they walked away, Kannawa asked her mother why she seemed to be in such a good mood. Her mother dismissed it with a light-hearted response, saying it was nothing. Meanwhile, Kannawa felt a mix of emotions about the evening and reflected on her journey of self-discovery and love, realizing she was ready to embrace who she had become. Would it make any difference in their relationship? Stay tuned to find out, and thanks a ton for watching the video. If you had a good time, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss out on future content like this. Thanks again for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next one. Till then, take care.